Okay, I think a lot of the main points have been made on the various strands. And our table was particularly kind of engineering biased. We were quite vocal about engineering because of the case studies that have been made in engineering that relate to what we've talked about up there. But basically on the perception side, we said, you know, you have to start as early as possible within the education system on creating what that perception is of the digital industry. And not only with information and advice and guidance, but also on physical interventions with education. So in industry with engineering, we show things that people use in real life and then reverse engineer that back. So it's using those kind of concepts, but relating that to digital skills. But also having that sustainable framework. So it's not about just going in 1 year and doing a nice big presentation on digital skills. You have to do that every single year and keep that sustained until, you know, they're making their choices for GCSEs and further studies, and then after they've made their choices for GCSEs and further studies and going into careers. So it's about that sustainable framework as well. As Jackie said, it's vital to include parents in this because parents are very influential in the family life and they need as much IAG, information, advice and guidance as the parents do. We talked about defining the roles, but certainly have a long-term visibility on progression so they can see progression right through career life cycles, but not only progression, the diversification in digital skills as well. So what else can that lead to? We also talked about things like the females into the male orientated careers challenge as well, because digital skills is still perceived to be quite male orientated. So how do you link the females into those careers as well? And it's about, you know, linking the female based interest topics into the digital skills network as well. We talked about role models. They're absolutely essential from, again, an early age, going into schools and any other interventions. And I think because there's a lot of small companies in the digital sector, then entrepreneurship, incubation kind of hubs, they're very important to the sector as well, and they should be encouraged from an education perspective. Barriers, I think everybody agrees that you know, funding and performance targets within the education community absolutely drives the different learning facilities on the provision that they provide and their focus on the parts of curriculum as well. So that's really key, and that needs to change at government level. We talked about things like experiential learning from a business perspective. So how can business play their role with regards to the schools and colleges, and an example was given with regards to the manufacturing camp that WorkWise deliver, where they've got that experiential learning in engineering, and they can take that exposure back to the education community and you know, talk about it there as well. Things like the lack of provision out of school for some of the learning that's required in the digital industry. And I gave an example of my 18-year-old who's actually just finishing doing his creative digital design MVQ. I tried to get him into extracurricular digital learning from 14 and nobody was interested. So, you know, the schools didn't deliver it, the colleges didn't deliver it, so I had no choice, but he had to teach it himself basically. And then linking STEM subjects to the vocational case studies, such as the gentleman over there said. So it's about, you know, you still have the academic subjects, but you make the links from digital industry into those subjects. And engineering, it's very clear cut in there with regards to things like maths. You know, I was talking to a group of maths teachers the other day and telling them that maths was really important when we're working out the RPMs on motors. So, and it's case studies like that that you can take into school that really resonate with the education system. Apprenticeships, how can we make it easier? Well, you know, there's things out there for the things like the ATA model, which is overtraining, things like wage incentives, which the government are really resistant to listening to, but that's a fact of life for very, very small companies. They can't take apprentices on if they can't pay them. So they need to be more substantial than the AGE grants that are being offered at the moment. Things like mentoring for employers, and again we work in partnership with WorkWise to offer apprentice mentoring for our employers that come into our academy, and that has made such a big difference to how the learning is structured when they go into the workplace, because at the moment, you know, if you're a small company, you've never experienced having to train somebody up in a structured manner, so that really helps organisations. I think that would make a difference. Things like redefining the model, so what would a really good apprenticeship in digital look like? And I was talking about what we've done in engineering. So in a normal apprenticeship framework, you've got an NVQ, you've got a technical certificate and some pink and fluffy bits. But what's really needed is good teaching and learning methodologies that underpin all of that. They need to understand things like additionality. So if it's in digital, they might want to learn about additional software and all sorts of things like that could complement their apprenticeship that they're studying. Things like employability, you know, would be really useful to include in the apprenticeship model as well. And we've gone through the same journey in engineering, and we've actually redefined the apprenticeship model, and it looks a lot better, and it's delivering better results. You're getting more rounded individuals, etc. And I think as well in the apprenticeship for digital, you need to look at things like entrepreneurship as well. So again, that's going to be relevant. Universities, I think they need better links to industry to understand what industry wants, so they're not delivering unrelated degrees. And again, we gave the example of things like a materials engineering degree working for a metals company that doesn't do metals. So what good is that? And we found in Sheffield that the catapult system, of which I've just Googled, and there is a connected digital economy catapult. The high value manufacturing catapults have aligned themselves to skills, and now our industry are focused on industry and how that feeds into the whole education system, and that's working really well. So maybe the digital industry looks to use a similar model that then has that driving force behind them. Things like year in industry, that's absolutely critical to gain those so useful skills, and then also companies feeding back from to university about what they need as well. And also from a university perspective, they could look at incubation hubs and things like that for the self-employed element. Just looking for my last one, the ongoing learning one. Ongoing careers advice. So if we can do it for schools, why can't we do it for adults? So is there some kind of portal that we can put together? And again, in Sheffield, we do the engineering exchange, which is going to have that kind of careers advice. Things like encouraging companies to do succession planning, so they have to look at future skills for their workforce and train their workforce. Longer term visibility on progression and diversification, again linking back to the education side, and models that you can step on and step off at right through your career. So things like short courses, blended learning, all of those things need to be considered on the upskilling side as well. Was there anything else?
You've covered it.
Okay, that's it.